Jane, it's so great to have you. You have been all over this for months now. What was the turning point in negotiations?
For 2 years now, Jenny. I'm not sure who was more excited about the news yesterday, Dak or myself. Although I would submit that last week is when I felt like this thing was beginning to turn a little bit. When I reached out, it was my understanding that the two sides were talking. And when I looked back to my reports last year, they weren't. So that was meaningful. And then when I was told that Dak Prescott was working out of the facility nearly every day, that says to me, well, the relationship's not that contentious because he can rehab somewhere else. So it felt like it was moving in a positive direction. Again, when I was asking people to characterize how this go around of talks was, it feels better. But it was my understanding that things really started to move yesterday, and then the deal got done around 4-ish. But, you know, when I'm looking at this, and again, this hasn't been filed officially, it's going to go in as a 6-year deal just so that they can spread out the signing bonus money. It's actually a 4-year deal with the 2 final years voided. Dak won, and so did Todd France. Todd France is not the easiest to deal with. A lot of reporters will tell you that. A lot of teams that have dealt with his clients will tell you that. But let's put a little respect on his name. He got his client paid. And when you look at what Dak Prescott was making, let's talk about 2016 to 2019, $2.7 million. His average salary was $680,000. Of course, he had the $31.4 million franchise tag last year. As one agent described it to me, yeah, the Cowboys could have gambled next year and allowed him to hit the open market. And I had pulled some GMs and coaches about what his market value was. They didn't view him as a 1 through 5 guy, a 6 through 10 guy. But I was told the Cowboys are always going to view their guys higher. So Todd France gambled on that. Jerry has told us things in the past that I've reported on your show. Remember Zeke? Zeke doesn't deserve the money that Todd Gurley got because Todd Gurley didn't deserve that money. We're not paying Dak, Jared Goff, and Russell Wilson money. We're putting him somewhere in the middle. We've seen with Zeke and DeMarcus Lawrence, Jerry ultimately ends up paying. And I never got the sense that they wanted this guy who's 42 and 27, who literally has started every game with the exception of last year. His passer rating, his fourth quarter stats, they know how hard it's been in years past to find a franchise guy. They've got it. I didn't get the sense they were really going to let this one fall through the cracks this time around, although they definitely overspent because they could have gotten this thing done 2 years ago at $30 million when we all scoffed at that.
Go ahead, Skip. I don't even want to take it. JJ, you did a great job. Go ahead, Skip.
So, Jane, let's take it back to September of 2019. After game number 1 at Jerry World, Jerry was asked about the Dak negotiations because Zeke had just signed. And remember the word Jerry used? It was imminent that Dak was going to sign. And somebody said imminent as in what? And he said days. So we expected the next 2-3 days the deal would get announced. What do you think derailed it and created the bad blood at that point?
It's hard to say. All I can say is that Todd France has proven to be a worthy adversary in negotiations. And it was my understanding at times there were things that were getting thrown in. I know there were things that were getting thrown in at the deadline last year. Remember, I'd reported that Dak had gotten on the phone and they were talking to Stephen Jones and Todd France was involved and they couldn't get this thing done in time. And so he played on the franchise tag. And then the worst possible thing happened to Dak. He got injured. A lot of us wondered if that was ultimately going to work against Dak, if that was going to hurt his leverage. But this tells you they're not worried about that ankle. And the fact that he's been working out every day, it's not like they haven't been able to monitor it or have insight on that. On that second surgery that he had, I was told it was about 2 weeks left to go in the season. The Cowboys were fully apprised of what went on with that. And so it's my sense that if they're willing to put this much guaranteed money on the table, they were willing to give him the 4-year deal that he was looking for, which ultimately means he can come to the table at about 3 years and try to renegotiate this thing. He absolutely won on all fronts. He stared Jerry Jones's down, the Jones family for that matter, and he won. So credit to him for betting on himself. It's something he's done his whole career, and it paid off here.
Yet, Jane, he counts only $22.2 million against next year's cap. So somehow Jerry finagled $75 million that he will make next year into only a $22.2 cap hit, which ranks 21st in the entire NFL, which is pretty shockingly great for the team itself going into next year.
Well, and again, when I reported last week, the thing that was going to make this deal happen was the two sides were going to have to give something. And so in Dak Prescott's case, of course, he didn't get the shorter deal that he wanted, but he actually does. If you look at the way that they're describing this. And again, that thing hasn't actually been filed yet, so we haven't looked at the structure. And this is what's just been reported out there. And then, of course, Dak Prescott got the respect that he deserved. He's getting to say he is now the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. When you look at the guaranteed and the signing bonus, that's a big win for Todd France when he represents other quarterbacks in negotiations moving forward. And we talked about that number was important to him, that it was going to be somewhere behind Patrick Mahomes. And again, we're not saying he thought he deserved that Patrick Mahomes APY, but it needed to be over Deshaun Watson. That's just what the market value was. And this also tells me that Jerry has to have some indication of where this cap is going. And maybe in his mind, he's making a little bit of some savings here, knowing where that could go. And you, again, allowing Dak Prescott, who will be about 31 at the time, to go out there and reset the market and bet on himself again. So it's hard to say that either side lost here, although you could argue the Cowboys did by not getting this thing done 2 years ago.
Okay, but how active do you expect this team to be as free agency hits coming up within the week here?
I expect them to be very frugal shoppers. Now, look, in the past, they haven't exactly been active in free agency. They brought in a lot of free agents last year, and I had reported that it just felt like the pH balance was off as a result of bringing in some of the outsiders. They've always done better with more of the homegrown talent. I expect that they're going to address some needs. And in other words, they'll go out and probably address the safety position, but it's probably going to be a guy that's been in the league about 5 years that can bring in some veteran leadership, but he's going to sign a veteran minimum deal. They're not going to be big shoppers in free agency, but they never really have been.
Jay, you just
going to ask a question or not?
Because I'm over here gloating because I've tried to tell Skip. Jane, Skip is trying to play this as, well, he's only going to count $22 million.
I'm not trying to play it. It's the fact. There's no playing to it.
Jane,
He's the 21st cap hit in the league.
Jane, you see where I'm going with this? The man gets $75 million. He's going to make
I don't care how much he gets.
You ask. Go ahead. Go ahead, Skip. Go ahead, Jane. Go ahead. No,
because every time you're throwing it back at me. Don't throw it at me.
To address both your points, though, look, with the Cowboys, you've got to ask yourself, what was the most important thing in these negotiations? And I've said it. Flexibility for structuring for the Cowboys. That's what they needed to make sure they weren't in cap hell. And Dak, I think, and again, I don't know this. I've tried talking to Dak and his side. They've played their cards pretty close to the vest. But I've got to get the sense that it's respect, right? His own teammates said, this is a guy we want paid. This is a guy we ride for. And if you just looked at how many quarterbacks they went through last year and how well that worked out for them, you didn't get the sense there was a lot of confidence in guys like Ben DiNucci, Andy Dalton,
Garrett Gilbert. And then when we look at the quarterbacks they've had in the past, and so Dak Prescott, and I said this from the jump, I joined the NFL Network his rookie season when he was a compensatory pick in the 4th round behind Jamil Showers. Kellen Moore got injured. Tony Romo got injured. Tony Romo didn't even get a chance to compete because that's how hard the guys in the locker room rode for him. I think that's important. That's good context. It also, I think, had a lot to do why we saw this locker room fall apart last year. And so this gives Mike McCarthy also a meaningful opportunity to show you how successful he can be. You can also get Dak Prescott participating in your OTAs and in the quarterback room. I think this was a win-win for everybody, but most notably, Todd France and Dak Prescott. Yeah, it's hard for me to say a guy lost when he gets $75 million in year one. He made $106 million in 16 months, and he gets $95 million of the $126 million fully guaranteed. And when the new TV money kicks in, he'll get an opportunity to get another bigger bite of the apple. It's hard to see a scenario, Jane, in which he lost. And as we mentioned, had he given Dak's contract before he did Zeke's, he could have got Dak for $32 million. See, when you go and ask a guy to sign, you got to make him an offer he can't refuse. Jerry made Dak an offer last year he could refuse because he had no years left on his contract. You're looking at Jared Goff. You're looking at Carson Wentz. When they got 4 years left, they got 2 franchise tags, the 4th year and the 5th year option. Dak says, I'm free and clear. Why would I give you the same deal that they gave their teams with 4 years left and I have none? When you could have got him for $32 million if you had signed him when you signed Zeke. So he ended up paying 20% over what he could have got him for 2 years ago.
But let's also, like I said, given some of the polling that I'd done of GMs and coaches, the one thing that really stood out to me was them saying, yeah, Dak can roll the dice here, but you have to assume that he's going to have a healthy season, that his win-loss record is going to be here. You've got to now also consider what other quarterbacks hit the market next year. And if he's viewed as a 6 through 10 guy, there may not be guys out there that are willing to pay him what he's looking for on the open market. Now, as one GM said to me, look, some team is going to talk themselves into paying him what he asked for. We saw it with the Vikings and Kirk Cousins. We saw it with the Texans and Brock Osweiler. But I just felt like there was a lot of gambling, not only for Dak, but also the Cowboys. So then are they going to overpay because he hits the market because some other team wants to pay him this? That's why I just felt like these two sides, Dak wanted to be a Dallas Cowboys player. And I think credit to him. Again, we're talking about the fact that he was playing with those numbers that I suggested through 2016 to 2020. He never held out. He always showed up to camp. He carried himself in the best way possible. This is a guy, honestly, he deserved a win. And I think he got that. The Cowboys saw that. And I think that there's a little part of this psychology. I don't know this. Skip, you've covered this team for a long time. Jerry Jones has always bet on himself. I got to think there was a level here of him respecting Dak for betting on himself and rewarding him for that. He typically has overpaid guys in the past, and we've knocked him for it. But maybe this is the one guy you should have overpaid all along.
And I think, Jane, if you look at it, you know how free agency worked. You always overpay in free agency. And Dak had to be willing to roll the dice. Yes, he wanted to stay there, but in order to get the money that he wanted, he might have had to leave. But since Dallas gave me the money that I wanted, I ain't mad.
And I don't think he wanted to leave. And then you have to assume he goes to a team and he gets paid. And I've never gotten the feeling that this was about money for Dak Prescott. Like I said, he could have held out at camp. He could have made this thing difficult. I think more importantly, it was just about feeling respected and feeling like you've done things the right way. You've overpaid guys in the past. Why is this? Why are we struggling over what seems to make a lot of sense to those of us on the outside?
Jane, in pro sports, what's the ultimate sign of respect a team can play to a player? It's money.
Show me the money.
Exactly. That's the ultimate respect. You can say, we're going to build a statue, we're going to retire your jersey. You can do all that. But while I'm playing, the ultimate sign of respect that you can bestow a player is show him the money.
Okay, last quick question from my man Shannon Sharpe. How much respect do you have for Dak Prescott, who you have repeatedly ripped on this show? Ripped and ridiculed on this show for years.
Let me hold the jersey. Let me hold the jersey right quick. I want to hold the jersey up for Dak.
No.
Let me hold the jersey.
No.
He's not going to let you hold the jersey.
Thank you, Jane.
Skip is holding on to that,
Thank you,
Jane. Great stuff. Seriously, this is about respect and awesome points from you.
Thank you for watching. You can subscribe here to get the latest from the show, and be sure to check out more of the best clips from Undisputed, or go watch a few other segments from our other shows on FS1.